UAW President Fain and our New York City members are proud to support Zoran Mamdani. He's not owned by Wall Street. He's fighting for $30 an hour, free transit, housing for all, real democracy.
The UAW takes on some of the...
Be careful, my man. After Obama, I stopped getting emotionally invested in any politician. I agree. I know exactly what you mean, but this is not the time to make those calculations, because the alternative is fucking Andrew Cuomo. And I know for a fact that even if Zoran promises a whole deal and only gets like 10% of it done, it's still better than what Andrew Cuomo is promising, which is nothing. Okay? We know Andrew Cuomo's track record. I'd rather place a bet on a new face that is ideologically aligned with me, even if he becomes a charlatan down the line. I'm not going to think about whether or not this is going to turn into a Chicago mayor situation. I'm not going to think about how this could turn into a John Fetterman situation, which I don't think it will. I think if there's like a John Fetterman style situation, it's the other candidates that are ranked beneath Zoran overall. Cuomo's going to. That's insane. You took two of the things that Andrew Cuomo has done and sandwiched them together, it seems. I'm not even going to say that out loud, but that is, that is an interesting campaign promise, but it feels like it's a little bit confused, because I think you just took two things that Cuomo has done independently and put them together. He does those things separately.
Richest employers in the country. Employers like Mercedes-Benz, Columbia University, NYU, Mount Sinai, and Sony. So we know a thing or two about how bosses act.
What happened with Chicago mayor? Chicago is very different. Chicago is very different. It's a city that is incredibly corrupt and run by the ward system. Like what is it? It's like their version of the council members. Aldermen. Sorry. Thank you. The aldermen run the city. The mayor is a mayoral position in big cities in America is already like an incredibly difficult position, because you're basically just like servile to the interests of you're servile to the interests of all the corporate donors, especially in New York as well. You are held captive by a paramilitary that has endless amounts of money and will literally threaten you. Same goes for Chicago. Chicago, you even have more limited power than the New York mayor does. So that is it is a real sad state of affairs. It's a real scary predicament. But Brandon Johnson basically is one of the least popular mayors in the country, if not the least popular mayor in the country. He ran as like a DSA style guy, but I think the calcified corruption within Chicago politics, within Illinois politics, but especially Chicago politics, and his lack of experience overall in navigating that space made it so that he promised a bunch and then wasn't able to fulfill any of those promises. I recognized this when I went to Chicago. When I went to Chicago the first time with DNC, I was like, what is this cop presence like? Isn't Brandon Johnson supposed to be like a lefty? What the hell is this? He's he certainly was not. I mean, he is at the mercy of all of the corrupt elements that dominate Chicago politics in perpetuity, that have, and he is completely subservient to those demands, those interests, and therefore didn't get anything done, and is seen as like a feckless institutionalist with ridiculous ideas at this point. New York, on the other hand, you do have more power over this position, even though there are obviously more significant enemies as well, more significant moneyed interests. But I will say it like this: if the New York mayoral position wasn't so effective, like for changing New York City politics, they wouldn't be dumping tens of millions of dollars right now to dismantle the Zoran Mamdani momentum.
They view the workplace like a dictatorship. The corporate class expects to be treated like kings. They want us silent, obedient, disposable. They expect workers to sit down and shut up. That's not just how they run their workplaces, it's how they want to run our country. That's exactly how Andrew Cuomo ran New York when he was governor. He bullied and harassed workers. He cut Medicaid in the middle of a pandemic. And when striking UAW members needed his support on the picket line, he was nowhere to be found. Those days are over because across New York City, the working class is rising up. We are demanding higher wages, health care for all, a secure retirement, a home we can afford. Because here's the secret truth that the billionaire class doesn't want us to know. We are the majority. And when we stand up, nobody can stand in our way. We don't need another hack politician like Cuomo, someone who smiles for the cameras and then sells us out behind closed doors. What we need is a national movement that unites the working class.
Is this Grant Minor?
Is a national movement that unites the working class to take on the oligarchs and rebuild our democracy.
Is he? Is that him? He's the student union leader of Colombia that was fired. He's the Jewish student union leader, UAW student leader that was fired from his position and because, anti-Semitism.
And
why are you spending so much time on the New York City mayoral race? Part of the reason why is because New York City is a very important stronghold for Democratic Party politics. New York City in and of itself is a major city for the entire world, right? New York City's police department, which the mayor would control, is larger than many countries' standing armies. So regardless of all of the corporate interests that dominate New York City politics, having a guy like Zoran there is ultimately going to prove a point that these kinds of politics are actually effective. Even past the point of maybe even some of the gains that Bill de Blasio made, which should not be discounted. Bill de Blasio is actually such an interesting mayor that, he's been dunked on quite a bit, but he was significantly better than Eric Adams and many other mayors that came before and after him. And it's really interesting that we don't really talk or think about his track record. I think he did the free pre-K initiative. That was huge. Actually, speaking of some of the initiatives that previous mayors have been able to implement, what I find strange is how much people are talking about how radical and scary and pie in the sky these Zoran ideas are. Zoran's vision is. Yes, he is a socialist. He's a democratic socialist. He doesn't shy away from saying that. But if you look at the policies that he's running on, it's things that have literally been implemented. A rent freeze has been implemented in the city with previous mayors. Okay? He talks about free buses. Once again, a policy that he has directly been able to implement in the state assembly. Okay? So the idea that this is impossible to do is so ridiculous. Nothing that he's talking about is he's not saying I'm tackling the commodity production at its heart. We're gonna build workers' councils and create a dictatorship of the proletariat. He's just advocating for minor social democratic reforms that are super realistic for him as mayor of New York. So the notion that like these are crazy, radical, terrifying changes that he wants to fucking push for is insane. Another thing, cooperatively owned grocery, like state-owned, city-owned grocery stores, that is something that people have been able to do as 501c3s. Why the fuck would the state not be able to do that when they literally have all of the licensing and all of the other more costly elements of maintaining a chain of grocery stores? Like, you could very easily do that. You could very easily start small and implement this as a project. This was also Brandon Johnson's promise as well, which I thought was going to be awesome. And the notion that this is like impossible, the notion that this is like an impossible thing is so stupid. These guys are actively trying to, the media is actively trying to terrify people into thinking that even modest social democracy is impossible to implement, right? The idea that these socialist policies can't be implemented when they've existed for years is just capitalism propaganda. Yeah. And I also will say, with the exception of like, Adam Carlson, that pollster guy who I think is like a kind of a liberal, maybe a social democrat who doesn't like me. I'm seeing a lot of dishonesty from people who are supposedly social democrats who want like the abundance agenda and yet actively openly want to defeat Zoran Mamdani. Zoran Mamdani's agenda is supposed to be directly your agenda. If you're a social democrat, then you absolutely should be on board. Like Ezra Klein should be 100% on board with Zoran Mamdani. Okay? Ezra Klein's wife, I don't know what her politics are, but she wrote a scathing piece about how undemocratic the ranked choice voting structure is, amongst other silly articles that she's written in the past about like, egg prices and whatnot, are freaking out. So why are they? Why is Ezra Klein not endorsing Zoran Mamdani, but instead endorsing Brad Lander? Now, Brad Lander has some decent policies as well. As a matter of fact, I would go so far as to say, will Brad Lander also be a fighter and implement the same policies that Zoran wants to implement? I don't know. I trust Zoran more than I trust Brad in terms of the implementation. Having said that, there's only one major difference between Brad Lander and Zoran Mamdani, and it revolves around Israel. He's a liberal Zionist. Zoran is an anti-Zionist. I don't even have an issue with Brad Lander. I think a lot of people are like, oh no, he's there to rat fuck Zoran. I think you guys don't understand that his primary purpose here, as far as like endorsing Zoran, plays a major role. And I think he actually likes Zoran Mamdani and vice versa. I don't think that there is animosity there, regardless of that one clip that everybody saw about him being like, oh yeah, it scares me when I hear someone say globalize the intifada as a Jew or whatever. But he is the third option here, and he's Jewish. And as a Jewish person who is literally the third runner-up, he fucking endorsed Zoran Mamdani. They did a cross endorsement. Like, you guys are crazy. That plays a huge role. You can always turn around and say, what are you talking about? You think Jews are terrified of Zoran Mamdani? Well, here is the Jewish guy on the ticket that is is the runner-up, endorsing Zoran Mamdani and saying Andrew Cuomo is the real fucking bigot here. So everybody needs to calm down. I understand why tensions run high. That is not the Elizabeth Warren method, okay? What Brad Lander has done so far is not the Elizabeth Warren method at all. I don't agree with Michael from Pennsylvania on this issue. This is a minor disagreement we have. Does that mean I prefer Brad Lander? Of course not. I prefer Zoran. I only want Zoran to win. I don't care as much. I don't believe that any of these other guys would even fight remotely as hard as Zoran would. Okay?